Hi YouTube, Angie here. I'm trying to seem energetic and stuff, but to be honest, I'm going through a depressive episode right now. So I'm gonna try and edit this because I lose my thoughts and like just now when I have depression. So I'm hoping that I can be coherent, but I did want to put out a video since I didn't last week. And I thought that maybe I could talk about my ketamine treatments because I get a lot of questions about that over on Instagram and Twitter, which if you aren't following me, it's the same there. It's Angie Gabs over on Twitter and Instagram. Apologize if I'm not as high energy as I usually am, but yeah, I'm going through a depressive episode. Usually mine, they come on very quickly and they're very severe. I was fine when I talked to my psychiatrist 2 weeks ago, and then I just crashed. And I think it might be because I'm overdue for ketamine treatments. We still haven't figured out how frequently I need them, but I needed ECT more frequently than the average person, so I wouldn't be surprised if I need ketamine more frequently. I'm thinking I need it about once every 4 months. I need to do a treatment. I've done, this would be my 4th set of treatments, and there's 8 treatments in a set. My first set I did in the hospital through IV, and then my second set, my third set, and now this 4th set are all going to be done at home. If they think that you're safe with the ketamine and you have had like a decent kind of reaction, I guess, to ketamine in the hospital, then they will sometimes allow people, especially people that are working, to take ketamine at home, because then it works better because you don't have to take a day off work to go into the hospital and things like that. And how it works here in Canada, at least in Alberta, in our healthcare system, I'm not going to go into my depression too much. That's a topic for a different day, but I have pretty severe treatment-resistant depression. I was diagnosed with depression in 2007 when I was 16, and now I'm 29. Got really bad in 2012 after the passing of my grandmother, and it also makes sense because that's usually when mental illnesses get bad, is in young adulthood as your brain matures. I tried basically everything under the sun. I even tried a medical psychic at one point, even though I don't believe in it, because I was like, there's nothing that's working for me. I never had that experience of, oh, I'm on this antidepressant, I feel so much better. I eventually was recommended for electroconvulsive therapy, which is usually what they do if you're really treatment resistant. And so I did a bunch of electroconvulsive therapy, and then I had a medical trauma happen during that, which I can do a story time on if anyone's interested. And I got some PTSD, and so I wasn't able to continue with ECT. So then they brought up ketamine treatments again, and originally I had opted for ECT over ketamine because I hate the feeling of being high that much. I know some people would be like scrambling to get ketamine because they're like, oh my gosh, you get to trip out like 8 times legally, you're so lucky. I just hate feeling out of control of my mind. I like don't smoke a lot of weed. Like I take like very mild edibles once in a while. I don't even drink anymore. I used to, but I don't anymore. Like I don't like the feeling of being out of control because of the substance. And so I was really scared for ketamine. One of the biggest things is like, does it cost anything? And I'm so grateful that here in Canada we have a public healthcare system, and luckily, even though ketamine is a relatively novel treatment, it still is covered under Alberta healthcare if you get a referral through a psychiatrist or through a doctor. That being said, it can be very difficult to find someone willing to refer you to ketamine treatments. I'm very lucky that I have a psychiatrist that's very open to new stuff like that he works out of a hospital that was pioneering research on ketamine treatments for treatment-resistant depression. But I know a lot of other people that have treatment-resistant depression that have tried to get referrals, and it's very hard. So I know a lot of people usually, if they can afford it, will end up taking a private route, and they do have ketamine clinics where you can pay, and usually it's like at least $600, if not $800 or thousands per treatment. and you can get ketamine that way. They have some in Canada and they have lots in the States. Whenever I talk about ketamine, I always feel bad because I know that I'm very lucky to have access to it. And people always ask me, like, how can I get my doctor to put me on ketamine? And I don't have an answer. I just know that I lucked out with my psychiatrist. Just keep advocating for yourself. I know it's exhausting, but that's what you have to do in the mental health care system. It took me a long time to find a good doctor. How is it administered? So it can be administered 3 ways. Ketamine on the street is usually taken in pill form and absorbed through the gut. I've never taken street ketamine, so I don't know what that experience is like. But I asked my psychiatrist what the difference was between taking it on the street and taking it in the ways that it's administered for medical purposes. And he said that the high is very different and the level of absorption is very different. And so the therapeutic effects are different. You usually will get it through IV. My IV treatments lasted 45 minutes with the peak high being around 20-25 minutes. Usually it's like in a hospital setting. And if that goes well, they might give you permission to get ketamine from a special pharmacy. There are only a few pharmacies in my city in Edmonton that have permission to give out legal ketamine, and usually like they fax in the prescription and then the pharmacy has to compound it, and they only give it out in like certain amounts. Usually I have to go pick up my prescriptions twice. I can't just pick up 8 pills for the entire time. I take it sublingually, which is under the tongue. I didn't want to take it through a nasal spray. That being said, it's the worst thing I've ever tasted. I might put some footage in here. I'll get my friends to film me. It is like, yeah, it's the worst thing I've ever tasted. It's so bitter that my salivary glands hurt. Like, they put this like fake orange flavor in it to try and make it less bitter, but it's just so bitter that I just want to spit it out. And it's a huge pill that you have to take to put under your tongue, and it's basically all powder. And you just have to wait for it to dissolve. You can't swallow it or anything. And so it's like, yeah, it's not pleasant. And usually like I have a sense of humor about all of this. I cope with dark humor, and so I like to like take pictures of like the faces I make, or, you know, joke around with friends and stuff like that if I'm taking the ketamine. So I just want to pop in and say that if you're enjoying the video, if you could click like, that would be great. That's really helpful to me as a small creator. But you also can do it through a nasal spray as well. I've never tried that route, so I only have taken it sublingually and through an IV. Like once your psychiatrist or your doctor decides to prescribe ketamine, then you usually need to get some tests done, some blood work, just to make sure everything's as it should be, and then also an ECG, because ketamine can impact your heart. So I don't know like specifically, but I've just been told it can impact your heart and your bladder. So you need to make sure that everything's working in that regard. When I was getting it at the hospital, they would do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so twice a week. And that's typically what you do when you're getting treatments at home, because you need like a certain amount of days for your brain to recover, and then you do it again. You can't just do it like one each day in a row. And to be honest, like I usually get really tired after ketamine treatments, like for the day of and then the day after. And so I need like that time in between to rest. You're not allowed to drive, obviously, after you've taken ketamine, even if the high is worn off. So you usually need a ride to the hospital or to wherever you're getting the IV infusion. I would go like in the morning, and I would fill out like a depression scale that would like indicate my kind of symptoms and stuff like that. In my hospital, it was in a room with like a bunch of other patients, and they had like little curtains around gurneys. There was like, it's the old it's the ECT recovery room too. So there's like 6 different kind of, I guess, gurneys or beds, and then there's like curtains around them, and then the nurses start an IV in your hand or your arm, hook up the ketamine, and the lights are dim because ketamine can make you really sensitive to light. They also like have like waves crashing and like relaxing music, and the nurses all whisper because it can also make you very sensitive to sound. Being said, they recommend that you bring something that you like to listen to, and I definitely recommend that. If you're gonna try ketamine, make sure you have like kind of calming music. I found music too stimulating, like it was too overwhelming, and I was like, so I actually just listened to like the sound of crickets, like because it reminds me of camping or like of happy times in my life. You're attached to a blood pressure cuff that'll take your blood pressure every once in a while, and then the nurses come and check on you every once in a while. But Other than that, you're there for 45 minutes and you usually peak around 20 minutes. So sometimes it felt like it went by super fast. Other times it felt like it took forever.
2,000 years later.
And I could usually tell in the hospital because I had like a stronger high when I was getting it through an IV. I could usually tell when it was peaking because I would start seeing double. I did have a bad experience once, like a bad trip where it felt like I couldn't move and like lift my limbs. And that was really scary. And so like I had to get like the nurse to like hold my hand and I started crying. But that was only once. And then the other ones, it's just kind of like, okay, like it's not like a hallucinogen. I wouldn't call it like I'm like hallucinating, like I'm on acid or something. Like you're dreaming, like lucid dreaming almost. Like you can kind of choose what you want to visualize usually, and you kind of have some control over what you're thinking about, but it's still kind of trippy. Usually I close my eyes because I just find like the light too stimulating. It's almost like I just like kind of daydream or have like a dream. And one thing that can happen that no one told me about is that it can upset your stomach. So you want to make sure that you eat something kind of carby beforehand, kind of light. Usually like they would recommend I eat crackers or like a piece of toast or something. I found that wasn't enough, so I actually needed Gravol, like a Gravol before I would do my ketamine treatment. I also, after my bad trip, kind of got like really anxious about it. And so you kind of like, depending on the headspace that you go into the trip, it can like affect like whether or not it's a good experience or a bad experience. And so I would also take an Ativan sometimes. I don't take a very strong dose of Ativan. I take like the starter dose. I don't know how else to describe the high. I find that the private clinics, from what I've read, they really play up that it's like this spiritual experience that you can have while you're on these highs and stuff. And I have heard from people that like they've been able to like process emotions and stuff while you're on the high. In the healthcare system, they don't really emphasize the high, obviously. They're like, we're giving you ketamine as a medication for your brain kind of thing. In some private clinics, you like talk to a therapist before you go into it. So that way you can like think about what you want to process, and like I've never found it like really helpful in like processing things. I just go in and then I come out, but it might be different for other people. I don't know. The first few times they wanted me to be supervised. Ideally, they want me to be supervised every time I do it, but I live alone and it's a pandemic, and so I didn't want like random people coming into my apartment, especially for the first one. If you haven't had it in a while, that's usually going to be when you feel the most side effects and you get the most high because you build up a tolerance to it. Like by the 8th treatment, I can basically like carry on a normal conversation and like sit there and like watch YouTube videos and stuff. But the first treatment, I usually get pretty high. Taking it sublingually, I was really surprised at how fast it kicked in. Like that's why they take Ativan under the tongue too, is it kicks in fast. But like I thought I had time to like kind of chat and then like slowly make my way to my bedroom and get under my weighted blanket and put on my headphones. But it's kind of like you take the ketamine, you go to bed. I didn't make it to my bed in time, and I was like listening to like this yoga thing, and then it was like, imagine your body melting into the floor, and I was high on ketamine and I was like, oh my god, I'm melting into the floor. My doctor said that it's got like a decent efficacy rate in terms of like other kind of treatment resistant things. So it doesn't work for everyone, but it does work for some people. Usually like they start noticing a difference right around 4. I notice a difference. Like I notice like I have a little bit more energy after 2 usually. And then at the 4th one, I'll kind of be back to like normal self. And then I just take 4 more just to kind of solidify it for the next little while. For me, it lasts 4 months. For some people, it can last their lifetime. For some people, it can last a year. For some people, it can last 6 months. He said most people, it usually lasts a year. Kind of like ECT in that way. Like usually like you get a set of ECT treatments, and then some people need maintenance, but that's like a really like low percentage. I need maintenance. I'm special. Yay. So I am now just figuring out that I think I need it every 4 months. That seems to be when my brain is like, okay, we're going to shut down and be depressed again. You can take it while you're on other medications. That's a question that often gets asked. Basically like a supplement. Like think about it like you're going to a burrito restaurant and you're getting a side of guacamole. Like it just makes the burrito better. The way that my psychiatrist described it to me is that it's like fertilizer for the brains. It helps the brain like kind of like thrive, I guess. Some days after I do ketamine, I have like so much energy and I'm like, I can take on the world, but I like can't drive for the rest of the day. So I don't know, like I try not to exercise really heavily after I do it, but I'll like go for a walk and then I'll like deep clean my place. And then other days I get really tired. Usually the day after I'm really, really tired because I guess my brain is just super active. But yeah, those are kind of like all of the basics. I do have a highlight on my Instagram dedicated to ketamine, and I will definitely do a video about electroconvulsive therapy and shock therapy because it did work really well. I just had like a freak kind of accident happen. Just wanted to talk about ketamine and get this video out there. It's not going to be my best work. I'm not making jokes. I'm probably not going to edit it super nicely because I'm in the middle of a depressive episode, but I wanted to put out some content, and if this is something that you folks want to see more of, I can definitely do more when I'm out of my depressive episode, but for right now I'm just trying to get through. Also post like lifestyle videos and things like that, so it's like I call it real lifestyle if that makes sense. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, feel free to comment them. I can always do a part 2 if there's enough interest. And I'll probably leave this part in because I want to normalize the brain fog that comes with depression. There are a few different ways you can support me. You can buy me a coffee on my Ko-fi. I'll put the link below. It's just a $3 coffee. Or you can click like on the video if you found this helpful, or comment or engage with my content. That's always like the most helpful thing to me. Thanks.